Welcome to Crimeroom, a true crime podcast. I'm the speaker, and my name is X. It doesn't matter who I am, it only matters what they did. Join us. Enter the room.
Crimeroom is designed for mature audiences and is unsuitable for young or sensitive listeners. Discretion is strongly advised.
In Adelaide, Australia, is an area called Norton Street, Angle Park, where, like the Melbourne suburbs, a large population of Asian families and African refugees reside. The place is famous for its high rate of violence and frequent fatal car crashes caused by speeding youths. In 1993, Joanne Lillecrap moved into a house on Norton Street, Angle Park. Lillecrapp was famous for his large cowboy hats, and this won him the name Tex from the locals. This was not all there was to Tex. There was a woman inside him. Not a wife, just the other Tex. He was a cross-dresser, an identity he acquired 2 years before moving to the neighbourhood. It's possible he was transgender, but there are no reports that shed any more light on Tex's life and gender identity. Tex found blending in with people easy. He often spent time socialising with the locals at the park's community centre, which was not too far from his house. His local community were like family to him. He also volunteered as a driver at the centre's free bus service. Tex was seen as wise among the African, Indian and Vietnamese groups as they sought advice and direction from him. Tex was also an entertainer. He was a professional wrestler and entertained the crowd shuffling between hero and villain in lively wrestling matches. Donna Lee Casagrande was born in 1970 in Addington Hospital, New South Wales. She was from an average family. Her father was a supervisor at a sheet metal factory, while her mother was an industry worker until she lost a hand in an occupational accident and retreated to become a full-time stay-at-home mother. Donna left school in year 9. She worked in different positions. First she was a waitress, then a process worker, and eventually a factory hand. She had 2 abusive marriages from which she bore 2 children named Joshua and Talia, who remained in the custody of their respective fathers after their parents' divorce. After Donna's second divorce, she began consuming hard drugs and eventually became addicted to them. Donna became unstable, owing to the addiction. To keep herself afloat and pay the bills, Donna became a sex worker. As a sex worker, Donna did not stop ingesting the hard drugs, and soon her health began to deteriorate. She suffered heart valve challenges and frequent seizures. Tex was on a trip to Sydney in 1996 when he first met Donna. Tex had been searching for acceptance his whole life, so when he met Donna, a prostitute that was struggling with an addiction, he felt empathy, as he saw them both as lost souls. Tex made it his mission to turn her life around, to save her. He opened his home to Donna and started a rehabilitation project. This decision garnered a lack of support from his family. When his brother, Ron Lillecrapp, and his wife Lindsay visited, Donna excused herself and went to the driveway to take heroin. Ron and Lindsay tried to advise Tex, but the advice was dismissed. Nicole Therese McGuinness. When she was 3 years old, Nicole's father left her family, and she was raised by her stepfather and her mother. Her stepfather was physically abusive with her mother frequently. At the age of 15, Nicole was raped. All of the violence in her life built up, and she took to drugs. Nicole, like Donna, was a sex worker and a lesbian. She was Donna's lover. By the time Donna met Tex, she and Nicole had been together for 3 years. Eventually, Donna introduced Tex to Nicole. As far as Tex was concerned, he had found good friends. He could identify with them. And they accepted him exactly as he was, as John or Joanne. They lived together in his house like one big happy family. John set up a bank account for them but controlled it. He alone knew the PIN so that he could control their spending and ensure that they could not buy drugs. John was inexperienced in dealing with addicts. One after the other, his things began to disappear from the house and failed to return. The women seemed to have a constant supply of the drugs that they needed. Even when they visited his family, the women demanded money from them and were threatening in the process. They threatened to trash Lindsay and Ron Lillecrap's home if they did not give them the money they demanded, and this attitude caused John's brother and sister-in-law to stay away from John. John continued living his normal life in his neighbourhood. He never stopped driving the park's free bus. He did not stop dressing as Joanne and checked in with his park community centre friends occasionally. He also worked passionately on his strawberry garden, his one true pride. When he wasn't volunteering, visiting friends or gardening, John kept to himself and stayed at home with Donna and Nicole. The women made frequent journeys between Adelaide and Sydney, usually to visit Donna's kids. These journeys caused occasional rumours around his neighbourhood that John had become a pimp, forcing his house guests back into prostitution. But that is all they were, baseless rumours. In November 2001, there was a report at the South Australian police station that John or Joanne Lillecrap, also known as Tex, was missing. After a few days, it became apparent that along with John, his house guests seemed to have vanished as well. There was no way to trace them, no hints as to where they may have gone. No neighbour or passer-by had seen or heard anything that could help the authorities find them, dead or alive. On November 9th, 2001, an anonymous caller informed emergency service operators that someone might be dead at the Norton Street house, at John's house. Major crime investigation branch detectives, along with forensic teams, hurried to the house and beheld something truly awful. They found human remains buried in John's strawberry garden, but the body parts were butchered up and completely dismembered. It was one of the most macabre discoveries in Australia's criminal investigation history to date. Body fat, some pieces of flesh, and chunks of crudely cut torso were buried under the strawberry patch. Detectives needed to figure out whether the deceased corpse was butchered either before or after the murder. 4 days later, forensics confirmed that the human remains were Joanne Lillecrap's, and they immediately sought to find his missing body parts. Meanwhile, Donna and Nicole were still missing. The police asked for help finding them and expressed their intention to go interstate to partner with the Sydney police in locating them. What the police kept secret was that they knew who the killers were, or at least one of them. Having gone through the pain of sexual abuse, physical and emotional abuse, heroin withdrawal, heart problems, and occasional starvation, one would think that Donna Lee Casagrande was a strong woman and nothing could bring her down. This was not the case. Donna struggled deeply with the challenges she had encountered in life, and one day she couldn't take it anymore. She had to tell someone, and she had to do it fast. It was the need for inner peace that pushed Donna to a police station in Redfern, New South Wales on Remembrance Day, where she informed the police that she had a confession to make. The amazed police officers led her to one of the interview rooms, where they started their recorders and listened to the grisliest and most invigorating story that they had heard in a while. Donna was calm as she spoke about the inhumane treatment the deceased had received from her and her accomplice and lover, Nicole. They had slapped John, beaten him up, tortured him, smothered him, and eventually stabbed him to death. But that wasn't all they did. After the murder, the women decided all evidence should be discarded and that John's corpse was their biggest problem. They couldn't carry John into his bus to transport his remains for disposal because he was too heavy for them, so they decided to make light their load. The two women took time to hack the body into pieces, making sure to deflesh every part. They buried his butchered remains in his beloved strawberry patch. Then they loaded his torso into his own car and dumped the body parts at different locations to cover their tracks. They discarded his head and arms in a trash bin and set them ablaze to hide the DNA. John's body was scattered in several parts of the town. All the while, one thing remained in Donna's life, and this was her addiction. Immediately after her gruesome confession, she looked at the detectives, Alison and Lanyon, with much hunger in her eyes and said, "All I want is my methadone." The detectives strongly believed that such an act could only have happened successfully in Adelaide, despite the fact that the confession had happened in New South Wales. It was not until November 15th that Donna Lee Casagrande's arrest was announced, and she was extradited by order of the Parramatta Court to Adelaide to answer for her crimes. On November 17th, she was seen being transported by authorities from the Adelaide airport. She wore a tank top over striped tracksuit pants and looked drawn and weak. She hid behind a police officer's jacket where she wept. Until November 19th, when she appeared in the Adelaide Magistrates Court for the first time, Donna was held in the city watch house. By the time of this first appearance, she had been cleaned up. The court ordered that she be remanded in custody. The very next day, Nicole Therese McGuinness was arrested by the police. However, there was a suppression order from Magistrate Alfio Grasso restraining anyone from releasing images of the defendants to the public. At this time, the only people who knew the reason why John had been murdered were the defendants and members of the investigating team. Even the deceased family members were kept in the dark. At the same time, a concreting and restoration business employee had discovered something gruesome. This discovery had altered his life, as he would never be the same again. He had found a dead body in a drum at the Wingfield dump and informed his colleagues. They called the police, who took the remains away. The corpse was identified as Megumi Susuku, a Japanese schoolgirl who had been killed by Mark Aaron Rust, a rapist and murderer in the area. For Ron Lillecrapp, these remains were not from his brother. In fact, he was convinced that John was still alive, or probably just missing. The answer came on November 30th of the same year, when the police made a discovery at Wingfield Dump, 200 metres from where the Japanese schoolgirl was found. In a drum, at the said dump, they found John's head and arms burnt almost beyond recognition. He had not only been butchered, his murderers had further decapitated and dismembered his body. After Nicole's arrest, the duo's court appearances became intermittent. It was not until October 2002 that they appeared before the Supreme Court. Their charges were read to them, and they both pleaded not guilty to the murder of Joanne Lillecrap. In April 2003, they appeared before the Supreme Court again. Nicole informed the court of her intention to change her guilty plea. She was willing to confess to murdering Joanne Lillecrap. On the other hand, Donna was adamant about her innocence. On June 3, 2003, Donna appeared before Justice John Perry, a renowned and popular adjudicator and educator who was nearing his mandatory requirement. The moment she entered the courtroom, she broke down in tears, mouthing messages to friends and supporters in the gallery. However, when the court addressed her, she regained composure immediately. Justice Perry asked her how she would like to plead, to which she replied, "Not guilty to murder, but guilty to manslaughter." Her counsel, Craig Caldecott, informed the court that the months of silence had been used effectively. He went ahead to reveal that he had been working closely with prosecutors, and by the next date, he would tender a statement of agreed facts as well as psychiatric reports about his client, Donna. Justice Perry, however, was interested in the motive and what part each defendant played in the murder. He further instructed that he would deal with both of the women strictly together and hear their submissions on the same day. The hearing was scheduled for July 1st, 2003. On this day, the mysteries surrounding the murder of Joanne Lillecrap, as well as the numerous unanswered questions in the mind of the public, were settled. Justice Perry paid no mind to the sacredness of judicial secrecy as he released Donna's case file to the media. The complete transcript of the Redfern interview, Donna's confession, revealed unbelievable and gruesome details of the crime. It also informed that Donna had always referred to the deceased as Joanne and used the feminine pronouns too. In other words, she saw John as Joanne and not as man. Furthermore, the case file revealed probable and actual motives leading to the murder. According to Donna, Joanne was spiteful. The accused had stolen the deceased's camera the last summer she went to Adelaide. When the deceased inquired about the whereabouts of her camera, Donna said that she had sold it to buy heroin in Melbourne and promised to get a new one for Joanne. Donna had wanted to leave that day, but Joanne held her back by locking her in the house. Nicole went to Joanne's bedroom later that day and discovered a piece of paper. The paper was from Footscray CIN in Melbourne, the same place Donna had sold the camera at. As far as they could tell, Joanne planned to turn them in for the camera theft, and this scared them. They planned to leave Adelaide for good, but not before they got back Donna's $600 in the bank account that Joanne controlled. In the evening, Nicole made dinner for Joanne, but laced it with a couple of Rivotril, epilepsy tablets. The medicine is a highly potent anticonvulsant that is capable of relaxing the muscles, impairing the memory, and inducing drowsiness. The women did this because they needed to subdue a bigger, larger, more powerful opponent in Joanne, and to be able to get away from her if the attack went awry. Donna confronted Joanne with the paper Nicole had found. Joanne agreed that she had wanted to call the police on them, but she had not. They got into an argument where Donna demanded the $600 from Joanne unless her host wanted to die. Donna claimed she had been saving up the money for her son, Joshua. Nicole got a stay-sharp blade from the kitchen, and upon her return she demanded the money again, this time assuring Joanne that once they got the money, they would leave. Joanne considered the threat to her life and the knife a bluff, and made no move to give them the money. Donna reassured Joanne that she would replace the camera, but all she wanted was the money and she would leave. Donna insisted in her story that the knife was for Nicole's protection, considering Joanne's size and strength. Tempers began to fly as Donna pushed a weak and drowsy drugged Joanne to the floor and kept her knees on Joanne's arms to prevent an attack. Joanne just kept asking her why. Nicole, eager to be active in the attack, jumped on Joanne and started punching her viciously, screaming at her to give the money to them because of how much it meant to Donna's son. At this time, Nicole still had the knife. She threatened that if Joanne did not release the money to them and let them go, she would kill Joanne. Joanne refused to give them the money. Instead, she fought back. When Joanne could not shift Nicole from her body, she started screaming, but Donna punched her face and broke her nose. However, Joanne still did not stop screaming, so Nicole put a pillow over her face and ordered her to shut up. She said that all they wanted was the PIN for the bank account and they would leave, yet Joanne was uncooperative. Nicole threw the knife aside and started slapping the victim. She scratched Joanne with her nails and struck her with her knuckles and palm. These actions caused scratches all over Joanne's face. After suffering for some time, Joanne finally gave them what they were asking for, the PIN. Donna took a 4-wheel drive belonging to Joanne and drove to a pub on Hanson Road, leaving her lover and benefactor behind. Her hands were shaking as she tried the PIN several times, but it didn't work. She was furious now and drove straight back to Joanne's home. At home, she saw that Nicole was still straddling Joanne, knife in hand and pillow still in position. Something had changed though. There were 4 stab wounds on Joanne's right temple, but they were shallow. She told Nicole what had happened with the PIN. Nicole was livid about the trick Joanne had played on them, and for her, playtime was over. She kept screaming at Joanne about how she knew that the PIN was wrong, because for Joanne, money was a top priority. She said these words with the knife pressed against Joanne's throat. The victim tried to get up, and suddenly, Nicole stabbed Joanne right through her heart. Blood gushed out of Joanne's mouth as she reached out to grab Donna's hand. Donna held Joanne's hand, but it was too late. She died. The odd thing is, Donna did not do anything to stop her lover all the while. In her defence, she said she was too angry to, and she was scared. After Joanne died, Nicole smiled at Donna and said, "I can't believe that money can mean more to someone than their own life." At this point, Donna started panicking, but Nicole was quite calm. Following Donna's suggestion, they carried Joanne's dead body to the bathroom. There was blood in different pools around the house. Donna tried to wash some of it. They wrapped the corpse in a blanket and dragged Joanne's dead body out into her backyard and onto the grass. They were both in poor health, and Joanne's weight did nothing to help the difficulty in lifting him into the 4-wheel drive. Donna got some ropes and tied up the body. Then tried to pull it over the grass towards the car, yet that wouldn't work. Nicole then went to get a toolbox. The box contained an axe and a hacksaw, among other things. Nicole, knife in hand, took up the hacksaw, but found it too blunt for their purpose. Instead, she used the sharp knife to cut through Joanne's skin. She picked up the axe and used it to chop off Joanne's head, then put the head in a bucket. This decapitation and dismembering was all Donna's idea, but Nicole offered to do it because Donna was crying too much. Even after the dismembering, they could not lift the body. It was still too big and too heavy. They continued butchering their former friend. They dismembered the legs and then the groin followed, leaving her torso to deal with. Donna stated that the torso was the worst part because of how overweight the deceased was. Donna took up the knife, cut all the fat off Joanne's stomach, and then they wrapped her body in the blanket. After the gruesome act, they regained composure and started thinking, plotting, and calculating. They first dug a hole in the well-kept strawberry patch, took the stomach and body fat and buried them there. Next, they used some garbage bags and wrapped the arms and legs in them. They got into the four-wheel drive with the limbs in the trash bags, the head in a bucket, the torso in a blanket, and the stay-sharp blade. They drove far out to the lake, about 100 kilometres outside the city. Nicole suggested attaching a heavy object to the body so that it wouldn't float, but this plan was ditched when they found out that the lake was a popular fishing spot with people moving about everywhere. They then drove into the Adelaide Hills, where they buried the legs and the knife in a spot near the Mount Lofty Botanical Gardens. It would have been easier to bury the whole body in one place, but Donna felt that if people found only the torso, then maybe it would be impossible to tell whose it was. After dumping the torso on a beach at Port Parham, they headed back to the city and purchased some petrol, about 4 litres. They poured the fuel in the bucket that contained the head and poured some on the legs and arms too. Nicole drove them to a factory at Wingfield, where she went in and put the bucket with the head, together with the arms and legs, in an incinerator. All the while, Nicole kept yelling out to Donna to hurry before someone came around. Donna ran to the gate and threw a lighter to Nicole, who poured the remaining petrol into the incinerator, threw in some newspapers, and set the items ablaze. After that, they drove home. Donna said that the images never left her head. Throughout the night, she kept dreaming about what they did and she couldn't sleep. Nicole gave her some pills to help her sleep because she wouldn't stop crying. On Thursday morning, they got up early, packed their stuff into the same 4-wheel drive, and drove off, leaving Joanne's house behind. Along the way, their escape plan was foiled by a minor car accident. Consequently, they dumped the car and they hitched a ride to Sydney. Donna came to confess because she urgently needed a fix of methadone while withdrawing from drugs. She had made an emergency services phone call from a payphone and tried to convince the call centre to swap her confession for heroin or any hard drug at all, but they declined her offer. Even though she didn't see or hear that the police were searching for her, she was convinced that eventual capture was inevitable and that coming clean would help her get the fix that she wanted. She needed to clear her conscience too. Methadone was not part of the deal with the police, and this sad truth only became clear to Donna after her confession. She became violent, screaming that she didn't have to confess. She had 2 kids that jail might prevent her from seeing, yet she came to confess and was furious that they would not give her methadone in return. On the scheduled hearing date, July 1st, David Stokes, counsel for Nicole Therese McGuinness, informed the court that his client was yet to sign the statement of agreed facts that Justice Perry had requested, and he had only just received his client's psychological testing. Thus, in his words, he was not in a position to make submissions that day. Craig Caldecott, counsel for Donna Casagrande, also informed the court that his client had not even reviewed the statement of agreed facts, let alone signed them, as he was only served them as he entered the courtroom that day. Furthermore, his perusal revealed that the statement contained certain things that were at odds with Donna's plea. Caldecott's statement was supposed to serve as a warning to Justice Perry. Unfortunately, he did not recognise the warning sign and went ahead to order that the statements be read. As Lindsay Lillecrap, Ron's wife, read out her statement, the defendants broke down in tears and Nicole placed a consoling hand on her lover's knee. Lindsay believed that Donna was as guilty as Nicole was because even though she had not stabbed Joanne, she took part in drugging her and helped to dismember her body. To Lindsay, there had been no sign of remorse from the defendants, who had earlier made faces at her. She urged the court to deliver justice by imprisoning both women for a very long time. Ron Lillecrap's testimony was not any better. He had lost his brother to the defendants on 2 occasions. First, they separated the family, and next, they murdered him. Donna denied Ron's statements, claiming that she shot up drugs in the driveway on their first meeting, and that they had threatened to trash Ron's house if he did not give them money. She claimed that Ron had said that he hated Joanne. Mr. Caldicott's fears were manifesting as the judge struggled to ensure decorum in his courtroom, threatening to put the interrupting defendant out of court. Donna sat and Nicole stroked her hair gently. Ron believed that the grotesque murder and butchering of his sibling was premeditated and that both defendants were equally guilty. He said all Joanne did was try to rehabilitate the women, make them better people and give them a better life. But all they did was kill her. At this point, Donna rose up and hit the glass walls of the dock, screaming that Joanne had sold her as a prostitute, that she had sold her body. At this point, Justice Perry ordered the sheriff officers to take her out, and they did. Ron agreed that he was not always fond of Joanne because he felt cheated, as he had always wondered what their relationship as brothers would have been. He went ahead to tell them that they were the worst kind of murderers that the community had ever seen, and sometimes he felt the words "an eye for an eye" should be a life for a life. Nicole dared him to do it, but he quietly returned to his seat. Mr. Caldicott sought an adjournment from the court. Justice Perry adjourned the case to July 17th and ordered that all submissions be made that day to enable him to pronounce his judgment and verdict. Back at the prison officials were called to a cell room where they found that Donna had slashed her wrists in an attempt to take her life. She was immediately rushed to the medical facility where her life was saved. She was kept under close watch until the next court date. In his final statement, Mr. Caldicott informed the court of his client's suicide attempt and said that it was an act of remorse. He further said that his client had been remorseful throughout the trial and Lindsay's statement in that regard should be disregarded. Finally, he submitted that his client had not killed the deceased, and if the court would sentence her, then it should be for something she did. Justice Perry was of the opinion that she was guilty of unlawful and dangerous acts, including drugging and restraining John Lillecrapp, breaking his nose and witnessing the killing. He added that these acts put Donna between murder and manslaughter. For Nicole, Mr. Stokes said that his client was suffering from rampant memory loss, a claim he supported with psychological evidence, showing that the murder was committed in a haze of drugs. Nicole does not remember the stabbing, but she accepts it because Donna said it happened, and she also accepted the intention to kill, thus establishing mens rea and actus reus, intention and action. He also said that the killing was spontaneous. For the prosecution, Stephen Milstead urged the court to show no mercy in what he described as a particularly serious example of murder with 4 serious features. The features were Nicole's admission of an intent to kill the deceased, the victim's defenceless state, the motive for the crime, and lastly, the gruesome dismemberment of the corpse, which reveals the callous state of mind of the women and is important in considering the adverse effect the crime had on Joanne's family. Justice Perry dismissed Stokes' argument of a spontaneous killing because even though it happened as a reaction to realising the pin was wrong, it had begun with the drugging, restraining, threatening and beating up the victim. He went further to say that the butchery was more logistical than ritualistic. The aim for easy disposal and not because they preferred to kill that way. Millstead agreed to this, but said that being logistical did not change the fact that the butchery aggravated the circumstance. So did Donna's failure to stop Nicole the whole time. He urged the court to sentence the lovers, Donna Casagrande for manslaughter and Nicole Therese McGuinness for murder. Justice Perry agreed that the Crown recognised the absence of Donna's intention to cause death or grievous bodily harm to her benefactor Joanne, but it was crystal clear that she did nothing to stop it. He remanded them one last time and adjourned the case to July 24th for sentencing. Immediately after they arrived, Justice Perry read out his verdict and sentence without mincing words. He recognised them as products of broken homes, drug addiction and violent childhoods. He noted that they had spent a substantial part of their adult lives in jail. He said that Donna had borderline personality disorder and depression, which were expressed in her suicide attempt. In addition, while Nicole shared this disorder, she suffered from impulsivity. He recognised the callousness of their actions and the effect on the victim's family. He sentenced Nicole to 18 years in prison without parole. He said that it would have been 24 years but for her guilty plea. He said that Donna deserved a 12-year sentence and she had to serve at least 10 years of the 12 in prison. Both convicts cried bitterly in the courtroom. They began their jail terms that evening. Donna was released on parole after 1 year, but shortly after was charged to court for aggravated serious criminal trespass, dishonesty taking property, and attempted deception. She pleaded guilty to committing the offences at Devoren Park in Prospect between January 5th and 8th, 2012. Magistrate Derek Spod found her guilty and sentenced her to 3 years and 4 months imprisonment to run immediately after the expiration of her manslaughter jail term. However, she challenged this sentence on appeal, where her lawyer, George Mancini, urged the court to blame it on the parole board for releasing her on parole, whereas her parole reports show that she was clearly not ready and at the risk of serving double punishment. He further informed the court that at the time of the crime spree, Donna was suffering the mental pain of her mother's death, an inappropriate relationship, and abusive employers. The prosecution argued that the defendant be shown little mercy and urged the court to recognise how much of Donna's criminal history was linked to inappropriate relationships. Justice David allowed the appeal on a technical error, saying that the sentencing magistrate ought to have given her credit for 4 months in custody. He backdated her new sentence to when she was arrested in January 2012, making her eligible for release in January 2016. Thank you for listening to episode 7 of Crimeroom. Join us next time. I'm the speaker, and my name is X.
If you enjoy listening to Crimeroom, please give the show a 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. Crimeroom is available now on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe for notifications when new episodes are released. Sign up to the Crimeroom newsletter or submit show suggestions at crimeroompodcast.com. That's crimeroompodcast.com. Crimeroom is narrated by X. Additional voicing by Matthew O'Reilly Kavanagh. This episode was written by Sandra Chikura. Produced by Rachel McDermott. Scored and mixed by Andrew Lynn. The Crimeroom theme song is by Sarah Sherlock.